I used to think love just faded with time. That maybe passion was something only young couples talked about, something you learn to live without. I told myself I was lucky, married, stable, a house, a routine. But slowly, quietly, I began to disappear inside my own life. My husband wasn't cruel. He just wasn't there, not in the ways I needed. Days would go by without real conversations. Nights became silent rituals, him on his phone, me pretending to sleep. Even when we touched, it felt more like a habit than desire. I started wondering if something was wrong with me. I spent months trying to fix myself. I bought new clothes. I joined a gym. I smiled harder, tried to be sexier, more agreeable. He didn't notice. Not when I changed my hair. Not when I wore lingerie under my clothes at dinner. He would glance up, say, "You look nice," then go back to scrolling. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just got quieter. Eventually, I stopped trying. I withdrew. I convinced myself I was broken, unlovable, maybe even frigid. I Googled things like low libido in women and emotional numbness. I bought self-help books that made promises in bold letters and left me emptier than before. I wasn't depressed, not exactly. I still smiled at work, went to family events, laughed at the right moments. But inside, I was gone, like a ghost in my own body. Then came the headaches, the sleepless nights. I started forgetting things, keys, appointments, even what day it was. My skin broke out. I felt heavy all the time, even though I hadn't gained weight. A friend of mine noticed. She said I looked exhausted and asked if I'd ever tried holistic therapy. I shrugged her off at first. I didn't believe in herbs and candles solving what felt like a black hole inside me. But she kept pushing. "He's different," she said. "You'll feel safe. Just go once." I booked the appointment without much hope. I remember sitting in the waiting room, scrolling through my phone, rehearsing how I'd ask for something to help me sleep. That's all I wanted, just a pill. Maybe something natural. Something to make the nights shorter. But when I walked into that office and met him, my doctor, it wasn't what I expected. He didn't look rushed. He didn't talk over me. He didn't offer solutions in the first 5 minutes. He listened. For a full hour, he listened while I poured out everything I hadn't told anyone. About the numbness, the loneliness, the fear that I was slowly fading into someone I didn't recognize. When I left, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, stunned. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. For the first time in months, I breathed without feeling like I was drowning. I still thought I was broken. But something about that hour with him made me wonder if I was just missing. And maybe, just maybe, I could still be found. I went back the next week, telling myself it was for my health. That's what I told my husband, too. He barely looked up from his laptop when I mentioned the follow-up. "Hope it helps," he mumbled. That was it. No curiosity. No concern. I should have been used to it by then. When I sat down with the doctor again, something felt different. He remembered things I'd said, specific words, little details most people overlooked. He asked how I'd been sleeping. I admitted I still wasn't. He nodded, not like a physician, but like someone who actually cared. We didn't talk about just supplements or routines. We talked about the noise in my head at night, the loneliness, the silence that stretched between two people sharing a bed. He didn't flinch. There was no flirting. Not yet. But I felt something shift. He wasn't trying to fix me. He wasn't diagnosing me. He was seeing me. The way his eyes didn't scan past me. The way he leaned forward when I spoke. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. I caught myself thinking about him when I got home. About the way he said my name, slowly, like it deserved time. My husband hadn't said it like that in years. I started dressing differently for appointments. Nothing drastic, just subtle changes. A little lipstick. Perfume. I told myself it was silly. But I kept doing it. And I started counting down the days between visits. I told myself it was the therapy I was looking forward to, not him. He recommended I start journaling. He said writing my thoughts might help me sleep. That night, I sat with a notebook and wrote, "I don't know who I am anymore." That was the first sentence. The rest came out in waves. I cried for the first time in months. At home, things stayed the same. My husband noticed I was calmer, but never asked why. He assumed it was the supplements. Once, I caught him looking at me like he didn't recognize me. But he didn't ask questions. We had dinner in silence. He went to bed early. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my next session. Eventually, our conversations at the clinic drifted. After the checklist of symptoms, we started talking about books, music, things that had nothing to do with my health. He told me he used to write poetry, that he stopped after his divorce. I didn't ask for details, but I felt it: pain, loss, something unspoken between the lines. One afternoon, as I was leaving, he said, "You're stronger than you think." I paused. That simple sentence stayed with me for days. My husband hadn't said anything close to that in years. I knew I was slipping. Not into love, not yet, but into connection. Into attention. Into something dangerous. But I didn't stop. I wanted more. Not of his touch. Not yet. But of his words. Of being noticed. And deep down, I think he knew it too. The tension became harder to ignore. I wasn't imagining it anymore. The glances held a second too long. The silence between us started to feel charged, not awkward. I tried to keep it professional, tried to focus on my symptoms, but my heart raced every time he walked in. I caught myself watching his hands when he took notes. I noticed the way he smiled, genuine, soft, like it was just for me. I didn't feel invisible around him. I felt chosen, and that feeling was intoxicating. At home, things fell apart quietly. My husband forgot our anniversary. No card, no dinner, not even a text. I waited all day, hoping he was planning something late. By midnight, I gave up. When I finally asked him if he remembered, he sighed and said, "I've had a long week. We'll do something next weekend." That was it. No apology. No guilt. I went into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror, wondering how I ended up here. Married, unloved, unseen. The next time I saw the doctor, I broke. I didn't plan to. I just started crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet, exhausted tears. He didn't ask what happened. He just listened. He didn't offer advice. He just let me fall apart without judgment. After a few minutes, I apologized. He shook his head and said, "You don't need to be sorry for being human." That was when I felt it, something between us snapping into place, no longer just patient and doctor. Something real. As I was leaving, I paused. I wanted to say something, anything, to acknowledge what was happening. But all I said was, "Thank you." He nodded, his eyes steady on mine. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. I emailed him later that night. Just a short message. "I appreciate everything. I don't think I said that clearly today." He responded within minutes. His reply was thoughtful, kind, personal. It didn't cross a line, but it got close. And I didn't care. A week later, I was back. The session was different. There was a quiet intimacy, a mutual understanding. I told him things I hadn't even told myself. He told me he hadn't felt this connection in a long time. I didn't ask what he meant. I just let the moment stretch. As I stood to leave, I hesitated. He looked at me like he was waiting for something. I didn't plan it. I didn't think. I kissed him. Soft, slow, like a secret finally let out. He didn't pull away. He kissed me back. The world didn't end. The ceiling didn't fall. But something shifted inside me. I felt alive. Not because of the kiss, but because of what it meant. Someone saw me. Wanted me. Not out of obligation, but because they truly did. I didn't go home right away. We didn't sleep together. Not that night. But we stayed there, talking until it got dark. It wasn't lust. It wasn't rebellion. It was something deeper. Something I hadn't felt in years. Something I wasn't ready to give up. I couldn't keep lying, not to myself, and not to him. The kiss changed everything. It wasn't just a slip or a fleeting moment, it was a decision, even if I hadn't realized it in the moment. I spent the next few days numb. At work, I went through the motions. At home, I avoided eye contact, kept conversations short, and spent more time behind closed doors. The guilt wasn't about the kiss itself. It was about how long I'd been emotionally gone before it ever happened. One evening, I sat across from my husband at dinner and told him we needed to talk. He looked tired, irritated, like I was interrupting something more important. I told him I wasn't in love anymore, that I hadn't been for a long time. His first reaction wasn't anger, it was confusion. Like he hadn't even noticed. Like the slow unraveling of our marriage had somehow escaped his attention. When I said I'd kiss someone else, he just stared at me. No shouting. No begging. Just silence. And that silence told me everything. He didn't fight for me because he hadn't seen me as someone worth fighting for in years. We didn't argue. We didn't cry. We just agreed to separate. We split everything like business partners. I moved into a small apartment a few miles away. The first night alone felt both terrifying and peaceful. I didn't reach out to the doctor. I needed space. Time to figure out if I'd done what I did out of need or clarity. I journaled more. I walked every morning. I sat with myself, something I hadn't done in years. Weeks passed. Then a month. I began to see things clearly, not through the lens of guilt or excitement, but through truth. I hadn't been looking to cheat. I'd been looking to feel again. And when it came, it wasn't dirty or reckless. It was quiet, healing, human. One afternoon, I got a message from him. Just simple. How have you been? I hesitated before responding. Then I told him the truth. That I was alone now, but not lonely. That I'd needed the space. He understood. There was no pressure. No promises. Just presence. Eventually, we met for coffee.
It wasn't romantic.
It wasn't dramatic. We talked like two people who'd lived through something together, who had found something rare in a world full of noise, connection. We didn't jump into anything. We took it slow. No titles. No expectations.
Just time.
I don't know what this is or where it's going. Maybe it ends quietly. Maybe it becomes something lasting. But for the first time, I'm not looking for someone to complete me. I'm looking to be whole on my own. What began as infidelity was never really about betrayal. It was about waking up. About realizing how far I'd drifted from myself. I'm not proud of how it happened, but I'm not ashamed either. Because the truth is, I wasn't broken. I was just forgotten. And now I remember exactly who I am.